just do computer and see how that works. Okay. Hey guys, I'm really excited to be here today and talking with my beautiful and amazing friend Hayley. We're going to talk about safer beauty and what that means and what that looks like and see where this conversation takes us. Hayley, I would love to just have you kind of do a little introduction on who you are and what you do in this whole world, and just a little backstory. Hayley and I have known each other for a very long time, like eons of lifetimes ago, which is awesome. I love, and I'm so excited you're here and just can't wait to like have this conversation. So I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you. I know you never know how things will come full circle, but maybe like a spiral, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Something different or bigger. And so it's great to connect with you again and just try to provide some insight on kind of my world. But I've been in the beauty industry in some capacity about 16 plus years. So working at a mall behind a beauty counter and then doing freelance hair and makeup for a while. And that was also whenever we were working together, I was doing hair and makeup on the side. And then for about 4 years, I was in formulations. So I was a chemist and then worked for a brand and manufacturing facility. So I have experience making products at a large scale. And then for the longest part of my career, about 7+ years, I've sold ingredients. I worked for companies that were supplying, marketing, and distributing ingredients from all over the world to beauty brands. So I have a very different scope of what safer beauty is. It's, as I said, it's a little bit of a loaded question, but happy to get into it from that perspective. So my perspective isn't one of a consumer. It is definitely one of an industry insider.
Yeah, which is
on ingredients. So
which is so exciting to me because, you know, Hayley actually had introduced me. She had invited me a few years ago to come to one of her industry kind of insider little education events. Not little, it was awesome. And it started to open up my eyes to what does it really mean? Not just like these surface things that sometimes we talk about, or different ideas that we have when we're not actually in the industry, when you're not looking at it from a science perspective, and what this actually means. And I think that's why I'm really excited about having this conversation with you, because, you know, as a consumer and as someone who's really trying to kind of look at how I use products and like what we have in our house, I'm trying to kind of be more aware and more conscious and make smarter choices. It's so nice to have access to somebody like you that actually understands it from a science perspective and what it really means from an industry side, and not just, sometimes I feel like there's so much fear mongering out there and misinformation. And I'm just really excited to kind of dive in and have you, you know, talk to us as like just the beginners. Like, what would you say to somebody who is brand new to this whole like safer beauty? What are you talking about? I go to the store and I just buy stuff. And it's kind of like, all right, where do we start? What does this really mean? And I remember from that education seminar that you did, one of the things that really struck me is you said, you know, water is a chemical. So not all chemicals are bad. And that it was kind of like, oh, because in my mind, you know, you think, oh, chemicals are bad and I need something natural. And it's like, well, wait a minute. No, that's actually, let's rewind to like the basics of what this really means. So I don't know if that helps you kind of talk about this, or
you touch on a good point. Everything kind of has a chemical name. It has their common name, like H2O's common name is water, but its chemical name is hydrogen, I forget, hydrogen dioxide, right? Oxygen, no, hydrogen, there's two hydrogens and one oxygen, H2O.
It's okay. You're on the spot.
It's in biology, not chemistry. So, but I was having a discussion with my friend the other day who used to work with Fortune 100 companies at Google. And so very, very smart, very intelligent woman. And we were having this a conversation about ingredients. And I was like, well, really there's a process that ingredients have to go through in order to get a name designated to them. And it goes through a group called the PCPC, which is the Personal Care Product Council. And they're the ones here in the US that actually review all of the like the processing and the source and how an ingredient is created. So it could be a very natural ingredient or something that comes from coconuts or some kind of flour or something, but maybe the way that it's processed or the things that the particular molecules that are taken out, there's a particular way that it's named. And I'm not an expert on the nomenclature, but I do know enough that just what you see, the name on the back of a package has to go through a process in order to classify it as a particular chemical group or something like that. So I think a lot of confusion comes from that because there's just a lack of understanding that in order to have some kind of protection for consumers, there has to be a way to be able to sift through all the information very quickly or somewhat, like a library, right? You have to designate where this goes and have a way to find it. And so that's why what the nomenclature is for.
And yet it's like that makes sense. And as an everyday kind of consumer, when I flip over those packages, I'm like, that nomenclature is
kind of scary. You're like, oh my gosh, this has like 16 letters. And
what is all
right now, just like looking at it,
Yeah. So how do we you and I kind of offline had talked a little bit about like the environmental working group as one place to maybe start. And because for me, I'm like, all right, how do I look at something and discern, is this a better product for me? What do these chemicals or what do these ingredients mean? How do I go about understanding that? Like that's kind of why I personally have gravitated towards certain lines that I feel safe with, like Beauty Counter, like some of the other B Corps that kind of take out some of the ingredients that might be a little bit dicier. But I think that's part of the biggest confusion with people is like, where do I even start? How do I go about picking things for my family? When, especially like as I've started to learn more about this and you hear about, okay, in Europe, they've banned 1,400 chemicals. And in Canada, they've banned, I think it's 1,100 chemicals. And then in the United States, it's like, oh, we have 30 some chemicals banned. That seems like a big discrepancy in what's allowed in our products versus these other countries.
Yes, it's a huge discrepancy. But as we talked about, I think it's really important to understand because we live in a global society that as the United States, we do things differently than in Europe, Canada, Japan, Australia. So part of it's cultural and just the way that we look at our society, that we look at our economics, being able to provide freedom to, or the separation of the states versus the federal. Because like California, we have like Prop 65. We have we're a lot more similar to Europe, I would say, in the United States versus the rest of the United States. And so California is really the one leading the discussion on clean beauty or safer beauty are trying to get those chemicals, different chemicals banned that
Mm-hmm.
in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
I think the EWG has really filled in a gap here in the United States, whereas in Europe, their governing body, just their regulations works a little bit different for their governing body. So there is a European um, Union Cosmetic Directive is that's the governing body for the cosmetics industry. So everything has to go through them. Here in the United States, we have the FDA. So the cosmetics industry falls under the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration.
Mm-hmm.
However, we still are somewhat self-regulated. If it doesn't classify as a drug, we
Mm-hmm.
are, our industry and the products are somewhat self-regulated. So, and because we're such a huge country, when you have that many brands and products being self-regulated,
Mm-hmm.
there's not necessarily someone to look over that other than just, okay, there's, you just know that you can't use these ingredients, these particular ingredients, and these are the thresholds that you can use other ingredients. I will say though that before a product is put out onto market, especially with large retailers like Target, Walmart, Costco, um, Sephora, those retailers, they have really stringent things that you have to pass. Like they won't bring on a brand or a product without making sure that it meets safety protocols. And
Mm-hmm.
so brands do have to provide testing that they've done on those formulations, the formulations that they're putting out there to consumers. So
Mm-hmm.
I will say that all products are safe that are actually out to market in those types of environments. What can get a little dicey is when you maybe do homemade products or you're buying somebody else's homemade product. It's kind of like if you bought food from somebody who was making it in their kitchen. Um,
Right.
you don't know that they were following particular sanitation like um, protocols
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So those are just some things that I think are, it's like, oh well, I feel bad because I know everything that goes into putting a product out to market is that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of energy, um, and safety teams, toxicologists, yeah, are just all kinds of people that go into making sure that one product um, is is ready to go and will meet the standards for consumer safety. Now, I think when the conversation has shifted because of that gap that I mentioned that we have in regulations from the U.S. versus like Europe,
Mm-hmm.
global regulations. So it kind of comes down to, I think, personally asking yourself, like, where where do I stand, and like, why am I concerned about it? For you having cancer, and other people I've talked to that um, really look to the EWG for guidance.
Mm-hmm.
There's been people, yeah, that have had cancer, have autoimmune
Mm-hmm.
diseases and disorders, and they're looking for products so they can take care of their future. They can ensure their future, have some kind of control, or at least a feeling of control over that. And I think for like new moms, or you're just pregnant and you're wanting
Mm-hmm.
to realize, oh my gosh, like I'm now responsible for somebody else inside of me. It's just not me, and I can like do whatever I want. It's a different sense of like responsibility. So um, for looking at those kind of living a safer lifestyle in that regard, I would say maybe look at some of the different certifications and see if those things resonate with you, if their values resonate. Like B Corp, they're
Mm-hmm.
a great organization, and they're a global organization too. So, and I don't know. I think it's just interesting how, like, I think of myself as more of a global citizen, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're all in this together, but there's some people who might not, and so maybe using something. that is just like that meets our standards is going to be fine for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, sorry, my mind's kind of going, but and that might not be the consumer that we're talking to right now, or the person we're talking to right now. But sorry, I'm getting lost.
No, it's okay. Well, and I think it's interesting. Because what comes up for me, and granted, I do have a different perspective after having gone through cancer twice. Like for me, my health is the foundation for everything. But then I just think, isn't that something we would want for, like, I think about my family and my friends and people I know, and it's like, I don't want them to have to go through, whether it's, and I mean, any health issue. But I just think it's so interesting because I know, and thinking about like the standards of what's acceptable and what's allowed, and thinking about like, okay, what are my values? I would tend to think health is a pretty solid value across everyone. And so it's kind of like how that to me, just this, I just think like, shouldn't that be like a standard in our country of like, hey, if this has the possibility of not being good for us, like, why is this allowed? I don't understand that.
Well, I also think when it comes to health, I mean, there's so many different aspects of health, as well as I'm sure as like we're learning more and more of, and the implications of stress on our lives, and
Mm-hmm.
do to us internally, and how that exhibits in our bodies. Um, but I know for the U.S., I mean, I don't know the statistics, but we're a very obese society.
Mm-hmm.
And so looking at health from that perspective, but like everybody has a choice too on how they want to conduct their lives. And that freedom of choice, I believe, is part of our culture. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the United States culture, that frontierian, like rebellious type of spirit, whether it can be good or it can be bad, right? And I think we're in an interesting time as a society, as a country,
Mm-hmm.
where just for me, I've seen, and I'm sure for a lot of people, you see the polarization, right?
Mm-hmm.
These conversations of like, I want change, and people are like, we don't need change. We should change. We don't want change. And I see that even reflected in the beauty industry. And to me, it's quite shocking because am I stand really more where you stand, of like, hey, I feel like as an industry professional, I have the responsibility to uphold the highest standards that I can,
Mm-hmm.
to ensure safety for consumers and people that
Mm-hmm.
I'm providing a product to or have influence over. And that's there's like, just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that all of us can kind of reflect on, like in our daily lives and our work, is like, okay, just because I can put this ingredient in here, like, should I put it in there? Maybe I should use
Mm-hmm.
something different, or maybe I could, like, is it going to hurt or is it going to help them? um so I don't know. I think yeah, we really need some change, and I believe the consumers are the ones that really have the voice. They want the change, and really, and this is how change happens. Though it's that you have
Mm-hmm.
there's some kind of revolution that happens, and I have seen over the course of the 11, 12 years I've been in the industry, people went from using parabens to like now, like nobody's going to use parabens.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, just in that, it seems like a short time, but the industry has changed so dramatically,
Mm-hmm.
and in a positive way, to build the awareness of, like, listen, just because something works doesn't mean it's going to work forever. We have to be willing
Mm-hmm.
to evolve
Mm-hmm.
and to listen, and to be able to support that change. So, and I do think that people and the companies that don't want to change, or there's going to be the resistance, that's kind of what's creating new opportunities in the marketplace, for brands like Beauty Counter,
Mm-hmm.
and retailers like Credo, and even
Mm-hmm.
movements like EWG and Oregon Tilts. They're raising up these issues that nobody else has addressed, and that is what I think is beautiful about our country, and just
Mm-hmm.
to um, the ability to create change. So, um, and yeah, so I think you're kind of safe with any kind of certification, as long as you're doing some kind of investigation on, like, what is a certification, and you have to understand that there's a global certification, that may or may not be associated with an actual government. So, like, Cosmos is a European derived, or it's a European originated um, standard. Like for the
Okay.
U.S., we have USDA, which I believe USDA Organic has been, um, even though it's like part of the Department of Agriculture, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
they've handed that over to the National Sanitation Foundation, NSF, to be able
Mm-hmm.
to implement. And then, but they've taken that implementation, and that can be used worldwide too. Um, Now, when you look at retailers um, like Target and Sephora and Whole Foods, like they have their own lists of things, and even Sephora, they have their clean beauty section right now. They have their own list of standards that I think could resonate with customers. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think just starting somewhere, and
Mm-hmm.
just knowing that you're doing your best, like where you're starting, and taking some kind of control um, over yourself is a good start. And then as more information comes out, just continue to ask the questions, um, but always be, I mean, I know sometimes it's hard, but try to be balanced in that. And like, okay, I know this is what I'm doing right now, and I feel good about this right now, but maybe in 5 years I'll feel different, or I'll have more information. And
Mm-hmm.
all we can do is just do our best right now. And
Yeah. Yeah.
even, within and the choices that we make in our products and what we're using. Um, I also think that when it comes to, like, sometimes we make a choice because we feel good about the safety, but we might not be happy with the performance.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that we talk a lot about within the industry. It was like, well, but it's not going to work, or it might not
Right.
be, or as effectively, or the texture might be different. And so, but I even think over time, I've seen customers become okay with it not smelling like flowers, or not being like a really beautiful um, pale green or blue. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the consumers, yeah, they're willing to have maybe a slightly natural yellowish kind of product, or it
Mm-hmm.
smells like natural oils versus a synthetic fragrance. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think as long as people keep buying and voting, like with their pocketbooks, like things will eventually change. But it is a very confusing environment. I mean, I even get confused when I go to the store, and I'm like, I should be the last person to be confused, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm gonna buy. So,
I know, right? Well, and I think kind of going back to what you were saying about like the United States and our the way that we have it set up for choice. Like we have choices. And I think that's where sometimes I get frustrated in this realm, because I feel like, okay, with food, I know if I eat fast food versus if I eat fruits and vegetables. Like not even putting organic or anything like that on the table, but just that simple choice. I know I feel better. I know it's a better choice for like my body and my health. But then when I go into a store to buy, personal care products or beauty products, I'm like, whoa, it feels like this smoke screen of there's just the transparency is sometimes blurred, like that, because a lot of times we don't have transparency, or it's like what's allowed with marketing or things like that can be really confusing. But I think you're totally right with, we do the best we can right now, and we're starting and having conversations like this, even talking about it, like these conversations. Oh, hi.
Yeah, I guess I should say I'm a mom too. My two beautiful.
Hi, ladies. Hello.
Baby shark in the background. So.
Oh my gosh. But I think
I'm a real person.
Totally. And that's part of it. Like, all right, what do we want? What are we creating for like generations to come? Yeah. And I think you're fully spot on as far as, how we shop, where we spend our money, and being open and learning, like, okay, these different stores have these levels that they're prescribing to, and maybe that's okay. Or maybe once I learn about that, then I want more. Like I want to choose even, there's this brand, and then it's like, all right, well, I want to come up to this brand. And it's an evolution and it's a process, and it can feel really overwhelming, but it is getting easier.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's more and more information out there, and it's also sifting through and making sure you're looking at the right places, or, educating yourself, or talking to people who aren't just like, oh no, this is good, that's bad. It's like, all right, wait, why are you saying that? Where is this information coming from? So I think that's a big piece of it.
Exactly. And I also think, maybe it's a more helpful strategy to when you're going into, or when you're looking at cleaning up your home and your products, is just think about, okay, what is it that I use the most of?
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so if I'm using a face wash twice a day, or I'm using a body wash and I'm showering every day, maybe I put more of my time and energy into finding a good, like organic, or something that's EWG verified, or Natural Product Association, something that I know has a good backing, and I'm going to spend my money there, because products are expensive. Anything that has a certification, brands have to pay for that certification, so that like adds money onto on developing the product and getting it into market. So because I think that's one of the things that has been an issue for families, is that it can be cost prohibitive. And so just pragmatically looking at, okay, well, maybe I can be really clean and safe, organic, natural, whatever it is, with the products that I'm using every single day, my hand soaps, my face wash, my body wash, my shampoo. And then I can be a little bit more lenient when it comes to my face cream, or my or my eye cream. What do you think, Sophina?
Well, and actually, like, oh my gosh, it's so hot in my house right now. I'm like, my face is all red. Well, and sometimes too, when I think about that, like, well, if it's a lotion I'm using on my face every single day versus like, okay, is it a shampoo that I put on and I wash out? Like things like that. Like I do think about those things. And I've also found, when I look to buy a product, if I can buy like a big one that I'm not going through it as fast, but I can, it's all of those pieces of, all right, if I'm buying it a little in bulk, then maybe it's a little bit less. So it makes more sense. Like I can justify spending a couple extra dollars, but it can be very cost prohibitive. And I think that's a really good point as far as what we're using every single day. Like I have a lot of makeup on right now, because I was like, oh, I'm gonna do a little thing, so I put some makeup on, but I don't wear makeup every day.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then I'm like, well, it lasts a long time. So maybe I can buy the nicer thing. I don't know. It's such like a personal thing. And like you said before, like what am I okay with? What feels good to me? And what feels like I'm supporting my values and my family and my health and all of that. So I love it. Now, one last question, because I know you've got family and it's your weekend, and I really appreciate your time. But I wanted to see, so if someone is looking to learn more, like, do you have places where you're like, the information is really good here versus here? Or I mean, even if it's just like pointing in the right direction. I know, like, whenever somebody reaches out to me and they're like, oh, my loved one was just diagnosed with cancer. I'm like, these are the only places where I will get information. Because if I just Google stuff, it's like a rabbit hole and you don't know what's good, accurate, anything like that. So can you suggest any places for people to really learn more?
Yeah, I actually the website of the company that I work for. Just a little bit of background on our company. We Kinetic Technologies really introduced alternative preservation systems here into the United States about 15 years ago. Got a little monkey back there. Gianna, can y'all go somewhere else, please, really quick? Delphina, here, let me go.
No problem.
She has a diaper. Okay, let's go watch Baby Shark over here.
Gotta love real life.
Okay. Sorry.
No problem. I love it. It's like, this is life, you know?
Like,
Oh.
we just have like a normal. Well, actually, this is a normal conversation. Never mind. I was saying, yeah, I'll just go back to talk a little bit about the company I work for, Kinetic Technologies. Um, Christopher Johnson, the founder of Kinetic, had worked in Europe, and his background is in microbiology. He came across some technologies that he thought were amazing, and it was using some ingredients that had preservation like properties, but they weren't classified as preservatives in Europe. And that was the conversation, or you came and heard that, a few years back. So my company really introduced that concept to the U.S. market more than 15 years ago, and that was before the paraben scare, before people were concerned about MIT or phenoxyethanol, any of those types of things. So we've been doing this for a really long time, and working with a lot of indie brands and people who are wanting to do something new and interesting. Actually, on our website, we went through all of our ingredients in our product catalog, and we put an EWG rating. We went to see, like, okay, well, I realized that the EWG was having a huge impact on on the industry and helping define clean beauty. Brands were using them as a standard to help provide guidance for them. So you can sort through our ingredient listing by EWG rating.
Oh, cool.
And then, so yeah, I had my cousins come out, and they're in college right now. One of them's studying cells and distribution, the other one's studying chemistry and biology. And I was like, y'all should come out and be my interns. And so that was their project. It was their summer project. And I was like, oh, these are my kinterns.
That's awesome.
And so that was kind of one of the things that we did. But then also, I'm technical marketing for my company, and we have a blog that I advise on the articles and the research that I want done that I think are relevant to our customers. And but as I'm as I go through the blogs and as we construct them, I realize these would be good. This would be good information for anybody. Like I love
Mhm.
blogs. Of course, we work with a marketing company that helps bring in all that information and pull together, but I'm the one that reviews all of that and then make recommendations of our products that we use. So I mean, even though like our company is like a B2B type of
Mhm.
company, I think any of the information is great for consumers.
And
And
what's the website?
it's called Kinetic, KINETICTECH.com. So kinetictech.com.
Excellent. I'm
Go to
excited
our
to check
site.
it out.
Yeah, go to our insights, and we post about 4 different articles a month, and we talk about clean beauty, different other things like halal beauty and PA, USDA, vegan
Mhm.
beauty, and then we're going to have a series of information coming out on testing, just so our customers, and because even though you work in the industry, you only have exposure like as a chemist maybe to one particular thing, and so you
Mhm.
realize like, oh, this other team, this regulatory team is responsible for this whole other like house of like information and duties and responsibilities. So
Mhm.
I'm hoping that we can kind of create visibility into everybody's world for
Mhm.
and be helpful to all arms of companies, whether it's marketing, regulatory, um, the chemist, anybody, and even the consumers. Um, so I can recommend that source.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's
Our,
gr-
so
exactly, and a place to go and get accurate information,
yeah,
like from the horse's mouth. You guys are actually creating these products and dealing with the regulations and the companies and all of that. So I think that's awesome.
and I work with the leaders in clean beauty. I
Mhm.
can't necessarily say who they are right now, but
Mhm.
I mentioned their name several times, and any of the premier um, companies in the United States that have put on the forefront of doing naturals and anything natural and now clean. We really work with and support them, and their teams rely on us to help develop their products. So,
I love that.
yeah.
That's awesome. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time and just insight and knowledge and helping us look at things in maybe a different way. I
Hopefully,
love it.
maybe it'll help somebody. Sorry, it's like I like feel a little scattered sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much information. But I really do hope that it helped, or at least um, to like start some conversations, some new conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm sure I will be reaching out again to bother you.
Please do. And yeah, and I can give you my information too. I guess maybe my Instagram information if anybody like wanted to reach out and ask me questions. I'm trying to get better about that. So
Well, and you post some really awesome stuff on LinkedIn too, which I appreciate because I always see the things and I know if there are things that you are reading and liking in this world that that means something to me. So,
oh, that's nice. Thank you.
yeah, I appreciate it. But all right, well, did you want to share your Instagram or
Sure. It's Dandy underscore Hay, DANDI underscore HAY.
awesome. So if you guys want to follow her or reach out, well, now you have a way. So,
Because it's
wonderful.
that.
Yeah.
Not Instagram cool.
Oh, Instagram. That's like a whole other conversation. Oh my gosh. All right, Hayley. Well, thank you so much. And again, I just can't say thank you for your time and your insight and your knowledge. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. This is great.
Awesome. Okay.